Hello and welcome to this game review. We'll have a look at a game in which white was attacking, but as so happens, when we're attacking it usually means we have made some positional concessions. This is not an exception, and in such cases we really have to find a way to make the attack work, otherwise positionally we will be in a lot of trouble. So let's take a look. So it started as the Chobaba London, e3, and white plays this move g4, which is possible, and it's the only way to kind of justify the knight's placement on c3. If white does not play actively and he does not attack, then statically black is just better because he has the plan of c5, knight c6, and typical pressure on the queen side, while this knight on c3 is simply badly placed. The only reason it's good is that it's at least developed and it allows white to castle queenside. So white pushes some pawns on the king side, he gains some space, this is good. And here he allows black to double the pawns, which is also a big concession. Instead, perhaps white should have played like this. This does not really develop any pieces, but at least the structure is intact. So white's position is also positionally kind of sound. He has gotten rid of his bad bishop, so he is not really worse positionally. Instead here, black at some point finally takes on f4. This was also an interesting decision to play knight b4, but okay, at some point finally the pawns are doubled, and this pawn on f4 is simply a weakness. It's true that white has a lead in development, but the position is quite closed, so it is quite difficult to create anything with this lead in development. So c6 was played by black, bit of a strange move, defending d5 for no reason. It is trying to develop the queen, but the queen itself will not really do anything. Instead, black should try to finish his development, for example, queen d6, attacking the weakness here, knight e2, and bishop d7, castling queenside, and black can even try to open up the king side with h6 at some point. And white does not really have any flexibility in the structure. He can't ever play f5. He always has to defend f4, which can easily be attacked. The f5 square is weak as well. There are some ideas of bishop b5 opening the rook, so black is in no trouble whatsoever. Instead c6, and now white gets to develop easily. Knight goes to e5. And positionally, white is not in any danger anymore because black is not attacking the f4 weakness. So knight f5, h5. Everything is going according to plan. h6 is one of the ways to break through. And here white took back on h6, which is natural enough. But it turns out that after this, it's not that easy to do anything with white, as white does have the g file, but it's not really easy to do anything with it because the knight defends the g7 square, and black can try to slowly develop his pieces. Instead, white should have played this strange move, rook d to e1, and the point of this move is that this actually makes the knight move away. The reason is, the big threat right now is to take on f5 and then create a discovered attack on the queen. So this is the current threat. Black can, for example, move the queen away, but now we can at least play like king b1, and now the threat is to take something on c6 and then take here using the pin. And the point is, this king can't really go out of the way of the e file. It can't go there because of this, and if it goes to f8, then the bishop on d7 might be somewhat weak. Here there is no immediate knockout, but the king is stuck in the center, so knight e2 can be played, knight g3, and black has no active pieces. So this was an interesting way to play, and such strange openings kind of require strange play, which is why I wouldn't really suggest playing openings like this, where the moves are not entirely obvious and they don't really make sense. GH is very logical, but it's just not the right move. So okay, rook g8. Now white is trying to get the g file, and here white decides to play kind of positionally. He knows this knight on c3 is badly placed, so he is trying to maneuver it somewhere, but at the moment a2 is hanging and there's no reason to give up this pawn. Perhaps king b1 was simpler, and then the same plan. Instead knight e2, and now some tactics start. So queen takes b2 happens, Instead, black should have not lost time and retreated the queen with a check, after which he has time to develop something like queen b5, trying to exchange queens, and endgames would be quite okay for black, as he does have a pawn. It's not for nothing, but it's a pawn, and he is with a less strong king, so he should try to transition to an endgame. Instead, queen b2, and now white could have basically won the game on the spot with the move rook b1, and we have to find moves like this as they are forcing moves, checks, captures, and attacks. This attacks the queen on b2. Instead, the white played queen d7, knight d7, but this exchanges the great knight for the bad bishop, and the king is not in danger anymore as the queen side is rather safe. If rook b1 instead, then rook b7 would come next, well, taking on g8 first, and this pin on the 7th rank would be devastating. Instead here, and now black could have taken here, which would be a bit more accurate take here, and at the end of this just go to c7 to b6, and black has the simple plan of advancing his a pawn. Instead, queen b4 is played. Now we get some exchanges, and as you pointed out, as we get exchanges, we're transitioning into a not very good endgame. And the endgame is not very good because we have sacrificed some pawns. We have also ruined our structure quite early on, so the endgame will not really be very good. We really have to checkmate. And after this, white continues with queen e5, though here white had a nice move, rook g7, creating obvious threats and using the pawn he put on h6. Instead, queen e5, king d7, rook g8, but as the more pieces get traded, the better the endgame is for black. King e7 here. Perhaps king d8 is a bit better, but the decisions are not that easy. The point here is that if here, then there is this move queen c3, and this will end quite painfully for white. For example, here there is queen h3 and queen g4 picking up the rook on d1. So instead, king e7, rook d3, but now the queen invades, and as you can see, white's king is also not very safe. Here black decides to go to a queen endgame, and from here this is a 10+0 game, so the players are in time trouble basically the whole game. And here black decides not to find king d8, which is of course not the most obvious move, but this tries to put the rook on e8 and then maybe play queen e4. But the time was running out, so we got this rook endgame, which is better for black because of the structure. He has the outside passed pawn, which is protected, and white's pawns are only weak. The rook is badly placed, so it's not very good. Rook g6, and here rook h3, which violates the rule of rook endgames. In rook endgames, the first rule is to get the active rook. The rook should be as active as possible, and here white could have done this with rook b3, and if b5, rook a3. We have created a weakness on a6, and white should have enough counterplay to draw. Instead, rook h3 happened, but now the white rook is badly placed. Black gets the two connected passed pawns, but the rest of the game is not entirely interesting because black had 15 seconds with no increment, so there was basically no chance to win this. Of course, b4 here is incorrect because of rook takes a5, but instead a4 would give black very good chances to win. White's king is quite close, so it's not going to be very easy, but black should be able to win. Eventually in this game white won on time, and this is kind of the danger of playing these kind of 10+0 time controls. At some point it's not really chess anymore that decides the outcome, it's more the speed of the mouse and the practical time management. In real games usually the flag doesn't drop because there's always increment. But in general this game is quite interesting from the viewpoint of statics and dynamics. White ruined his structure quite early on, but black did not really use this, instead tried to develop the queen for no reason. But in reality in this position white does not really have any real attacking chances if black finishes his development.